Welcome everybody to the ultimate game development roadmap. Now the first question we need to ask ourselves is, why do we actually need a roadmap? Liam.
So, as you may know guys, game development is a massive skill to learn. There are so many different things you have to learn: programming, game art, game design, sound, marketing. And so it could get pretty daunting, especially when you're a beginner, you don't know anything at all. So having a clear roadmap, having a clear trajectory to success is going to increase your success rates, is going to make you not give up, and it's just going to make everything more clear, right?
Exactly. So one of the problems is not only like, how do I learn, but what do I learn? What's the correct route to take? Because without a map, right, you can easily get lost. And this is what we're going to really try and underline in this video, is the exact steps to take to go from somebody that doesn't know anything about game development to somebody who actually makes games and then ultimately sells them and earns money with them. So the first step, what is that first step, Liam? The first step they have to do on day one of wanting to become a game creator.
So the first thing you've got to do, guys, is of course learn the basics of game development. You got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so what we suggest you to do is just watch a nice introductory course on Unity. You want to learn the basics of the Unity gear engine. You want to learn the basics of C# programming and how to put, a simple game together.
Yes, you want to look at tutorials, and you're going to be watching these throughout your journey, and even like 10 years from now, you'll still be watching tutorials, of course, on more advanced topics probably, but right now you just want to find the most basic course you can find online or through a book, wherever you prefer. You just want to watch those tutorials, follow along whatever they're saying, try and understand the most possible, and just replicate the game they're creating. So we really recommend tutorials that actually have you create a game, not just tutorials that are telling you like some vague concepts. You really want to get your hands dirty by creating a game.
Something project-based.
Yes, project-based.
Okay, so they've watched their introductory course, they've learned the basics of Unity and of C#. What's the next step? Should they watch another tutorial maybe?
Now, to answer Liam's next question is no, I don't think you should watch one tutorial course, and then just follow along with another course and so on. It's super important that you watch your tutorials, you watch your courses, but then you also apply that knowledge to your very own projects. So we don't want you to always be handheld every single step of the way. It's super important that you get out of that you get creative, and that you make your own games. So linked to this video, there's a PDF game idea cheat sheet where we basically got 10 unique game ideas ranging from level 1 to level 3. So what we want you to do, guys, is once you've watched your introductory course, to make 2 games from the level 1 projects. And Liam, how long should this take?
It should be done, each game should be done in less than a week. You don't want to create big projects. Anyway, these game ideas we're providing you are really simple, small game ideas that should be done in 1 week. And this is gonna be great, guys, because you're not gonna be copying and pasting anymore like we did in the introductory course. You're going to be figuring out everything on your own. Of course, you're not gonna have all the solutions all the time, and that's when you're going to search on the internet and search for specific tutorials on the problems that you need. And that's the way to learn coding
that is one of the
and
best ways.
Game development is just to search for a particular problem, go on forums, tutorials, and you gotta find solutions.
Exactly. What you want to get out of as soon as possible is what we call the tutorial purgatory, where all you're doing is just watching tutorials and never innovating, never thinking for yourself. That's why, as Liam said, right, say you're making a simple game or a simple city builder game, and you don't know how to get your UI buttons working. Well, now you just need to search online for that specific problem, how to make interactable UI buttons inside of Unity. There will be a bunch of tutorials that will turn up, and then from that knowledge from those tutorials, you'll be able to implement that into your very own projects. That is pure gold to improve your skills. Next important step on your roadmap is to start building up a social media presence as early as possible. Now, can you elaborate a bit more on that, Liam?
Yep, exactly. So what you're going to want to do is create a Twitter account, an Instagram account. This could be whatever you want, but we recommend, Twitter and Instagram is probably the 2 best ones. And you just want to start sharing some progress. Maybe it could be a weekly post or a daily post if you want. You can maybe do a nice little recap of what you've added to a certain project, screenshots or GIFs of your game. You'll just get used to sharing progress and maybe even start to build a community. A few people might follow you, and it's a good way to stay accountable.
Very important, accountability. That is one, I would say, at least one of the most important reasons to start a social media presence early is that those few followers that you might gain, even if it's just friends and family, is going to hold you accountable, so they know that you're working on these projects, so you can't give up on the sly. It's also a great way, right, to give feedback to other developers, start building that network, make sure that you're giving feedback, that you're responding to the different people that might respond to you. Enter that conversation, really show the world that you exist and that you're on this amazing journey to learning how to create games. And you'll be surprised how many people are interested in actually following a motivated, passionate game creator that isn't necessarily very good now, but that shows that he's hungry to learn and is hungry to get better.
You're showing them the journey, right? So you're not just popping up as a massive, incredible game developer. You're starting out as a beginner, and people like to see that journey. They like to see the struggles, the problems you encounter, the successes, everything.
Yeah, so keep it simple. As Liam said, maybe make it a weekly post on, say, just Twitter. If you have to choose between Twitter and Instagram, we would say Twitter is better. It's definitely more game development, heavy than Instagram. There's a lot more conversation going on and so on.
It's called X, by the way, now. But
true, it's called X. Yeah, so just make one post every week. Start with that. Then if you want to do every day, all the better. But just make sure it's consistent. Don't take too much time on that, but just start installing that presence.
All right, the next step, guys, is you're going to participate in your very first game jam.
Yeah.
So a game jam is basically a game development competition where a group of people are going to make a game based on a certain theme, and so that could be 2 days, it could be a week. It's all sorts of different game jams.
That is a huge part of the game jam atmosphere and importance is the deadline.
Yeah.
The deadline is so key to being a great game creator, to being somebody that actually gets things done. One of the most famous game jams is called Let 'em Dare, and actually there's 2 different modes basically of this game jam, but either it's make a game in 2 days or make a game in 3 days. And this might sound crazy and you're like, that's impossible, but I assure you, if the game idea is relatively simple, relatively small, you have to make kind of small projects when starting out, you can do some great things in 2 to 3 days, basically just a weekend. So deadline.
Game jams are going to teach you a lot about scope, which is basically not dreaming up a massively ambitious game idea, but creating a scope and saying, okay, I've got only 3 days, I'm going to have to make something small but that's nice and polished, and that's really important. That's one of the biggest mistakes of beginner game developers, is that they think they could do something way too ambitious with the time they've got, and they end up making a shitty game.
Or not making anything at all. I think that's the greatest danger, is actually just starting something overly ambitious, getting discouraged, and just quitting game development altogether. That's why we're really massive advocates of start with small games, and for sure, those really ambitious, exciting ideas that you have, you will make them one day. That's super important. You're going to make them one day, but just don't do it right now, because you do not have the skills quite yet to get started. Now, you maybe can pull it off, of course, but we don't recommend you take that risk, right? You might spend several months not going anywhere, getting just really discouraged. Instead, build out that confidence, make small games bit by bit, hence why the game jam with its very short deadline is a great challenge, because it's going to force you to make something relatively small.
And also just the community around it. You're going to be reviewing and playing other people's games. People are going to be giving you feedback. So it's a great way to just connect with different developers, see what people are making, and get feedback on your own game.
I remember my very first game jam that I did was a Let 'em Dare game jam made in 40 hours. And when I published that game, I think a few days later, I maybe had 200 comments on that game. And that was the very first time that I actually got a huge amount of feedback. Because before that, it was just my mum and dad that were basically playing my games and telling me what they thought, maybe a few friends as well. So really not much feedback. And as soon as I took part in a game jam, which already has a built-in community, suddenly I was like, wow, I've got all this feedback, all these lessons, all these people that are telling me what they thought, that they enjoyed the game, sharing their high scores. So that was also, I think, another big reason game jams are amazing, is it's super motivating to actually feel like you're part of this community and having this conversation, getting people playtesting your work. So really motivating stuff. Okay, so the next step on this game development roadmap is basically watch another course. Get back into the tutorial world and follow it along from A to Z.
Right.
However, Liam, what should they be looking for in this course, in this tutorial?
So you've learned the basics of Unity, C# programming, you've experimented with a couple of games, you've even participated in the game jam. So now you've got to watch a course that's a little bit more advanced, right? So maybe a course that's going to make a bigger game. So it could be a course that's going to teach you how to create a full top-down shooter game, a full platformer. It might even tap into game art, game design, some sound effects. You want a course, and you want to again do the copy and paste route here. You're going to be following this course and creating the exact game that the guy in the tutorial is showing you.
Once you've done that, we're going to return to the kind of your own. Just working on your own, experimenting, right?
It's good to have that type of cycle where you're learning, just copying and pasting, but learning actual skills, and then implementing what you've learned and creating your own projects, and of course searching for specific tutorials,
Absolutely.
and then going back, learning, experimenting. You're going to be doing that all your life basically.
Yeah, so with the game idea cheat sheets, again, we return to that, and we've got level 2 projects, which we've kind of very simple games again, super simple, but they're slightly more complex than the level 1 games. So we recommend you make 2 of those level 2 games. And again, don't give yourself more than 2 weeks per project, and ideally even just 1 week. These are still super short games, and depending on how much time you've got, if you've only got 1 hour per day to invest on game dev, you will likely need at least 2 weeks to finish these level 2 games. But yeah, just make 2 of those, put them on itch.io or Newgrounds, make your social media posts, continue building out that portfolio. I think it's really important to underline the importance of being a generalist as opposed to a specialized person, especially in this early stage. Don't go into game dev saying to yourself, oh, I'm going to be a game artist, or oh, I'm just going to be a game programmer. First of all, get a broad understanding of all the skills involved inside of game development. There's a lot of those, right, Liam? Give a quick summary of all the skills within game dev.
Programming, there's game art, and game art's even divided in 2. You could do 2D game art or 3D game art.
Yeah.
You're going to have sound design, sound effects.
Game animation,
rigging, texturing, lighting,
marketing. Just the whole game design world is enormous. There's all kinds of ways.
There are a ton of skills, but you should tap into a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's really fun to do everything, of course, and
just get interested, right? Get interested. And why do we say this? Well, first of all, because initially you'll probably be solo. Unless you're really lucky, you'll probably not have a game artist and a game programmer and a musician and so on. So if you actually want to finish games, you're going to have to kind of understand how to do a little bit of everything. Doesn't mean you need to be good at everything. Of course not. Even if you're just really mediocre at every single thing at this stage, that's normal and that's fine. So yeah, just to get started to finish things, you're going to have to be a generalist. But this is also super important for later in your journey. For example, let's say you do specialize as a game artist.
You're going to be collaborating with programmers.
Exactly.
You still need a little bit of a background in programming to understand and to be able to communicate better with your programmer.
Yeah.
So that's why it's good to know a little bit of everything.
Absolutely. So a game artist that understands at least the basics of programming will be able to communicate so much better with that programmer, and also understand that his game art, he has to maybe make it in a specific way that is going to work with the code. Okay, next step on the roadmap. This is not really a step, but this is more something it's a very long step, right? Something that should always be in the back burner. And this is habits to form on your game dev journey. What are the little things you should be doing while on top of that, on top of making your games, learning and stuff, what are some really important habits? Start with some.
So the first habit, guys, that I would recommend is having a small notebook, really small notebook that you could put in a pocket or in a small bag or something that you always have around you, and you're going to fill that notebook with game ideas. And now game ideas, they don't just come, they could come anytime. You could be in a coffee shop and you're going to have a game idea, and it's always good to have a notebook, right there that you could quickly scribble a few lines, a few drawings.
Ideas, so instead of having your phone in your pocket and just scrolling social media, you've got a little book, and you could even just use that to sketch out, practice your game arts, just sketch the street, the church, the cathedral, whatever, just use this book to be creative instead of just being passively on your phone all the time.
So the next step, guys, is when you're playing video games, don't just play them. Of course, you can do that sometimes. It's also a good idea to have a notebook and to analyze the games.
Basically, just keep an observation book. You're playing games, but you're now not only a player, a passive player, but you're also a game creator that wants to improve his craft. So again, as Liam said, write what you like, what would you improve, but also play games that you really dislike and try and figure out exactly why you dislike those games.
True, yeah.
Right? Why the heck do I hate this mechanic? Write that down, and also write 3 ways you would improve that. And frankly, I feel like I enjoy playing games even more when I do this now. I think it's a really enjoyable process of doing that.
So with the first step of having your notebook for your own game ideas, plus this, where you're analyzing games, is really going to give you a ton of game ideas.
inspiration, observation, game design, like thinking. And it's just great having these notebooks, keeping track of them on a nice shelf and so on, just seeing what you've been playing, your different ideas from 10 years ago might spark a new idea in the present, you never know. The next habit that we, this is kind of a general life habit, I would say, is just really cut out distractions. Now, again, distractions come in very many different forms and are probably different for everybody. In my case, for example, like my phone, I try and put it in another room so that I'm purely focused and not be distracted by messages from friends, family, or whatever. So I can just focus on my work. Distraction for me personally is also music, like lyrical music, pop music. I think that it distracts me, especially when I'm coding. So just I'm not going to do that, right? I want to save time. I want to be 100% in my work.
Yeah, the most important thing, guys, is to stay focused. So if you're working on a game, don't check your phone and because you've received a notification or an email. I mean, that could wait. Just like work on your game for 1 hour, then you can maybe check whatever you want, then go back, work an hour.
Yeah, and the enjoyment in your work for me also comes from the fact of being immersed in it,
Yeah.
And it might take a bit of time to get immersed in your work, and that's when the real enjoyment and the best work comes. Another habit that I really like,
and we've been doing a lot.
Yeah, that I think is really fun, is just organizing quick prototyping sessions. Liam, elaborate a bit more on that.
Yes, that could be like at one point we're doing 10-minute prototype sessions where we would come to the office and for 10 minutes we would both create a small prototype on a certain theme. So it could be like farm, and we'd create a farm game in 10 minutes. Of course, these games are really bad. I mean, 10 minutes is nothing, but it really gets your creative juices flowing. It builds momentum, and you're starting the day with a nice, you're creating a game already.
You're
so no procrastination.
Exactly.
And you're already on your computer.
I love this.
And you've made a prototype.
I love this.
It doesn't need to be 10 minutes, of course. It could be, a 1 hour, 2 hours. Keep it short.
Yeah, just like rapid prototyping sessions, we call them. And this is just a great way to just improve your game creation skills and get momentum going. Some days we're just like, oh, I have no motivation. But all you need sometimes is just like making a little something in 30 minutes, and there we go, bam, you're into that state, that game making state, and you're suddenly gonna do like a lot of cool things. So yeah, rapid prototyping sessions. For now, just set yourself maybe once a week. You need to make a game in 1 hour. Challenge yourself. As Liam said, we do not care if it's a good game. 99% of the time it will be kind of bad. But it might be the seed of something great. It might give you the idea for a really long, epic project. So try it.
One day we actually took it an extra step further and we made 10 prototypes in one single day.
That was such a fun day.
And one of those prototypes actually turned out to be one of our next commercial games.
Yeah, it was the seed for what we would turn into our third Steam game.
The game doesn't need to be incredible, but even if there was just like a certain mechanic that we found interesting, we could then expand on that game and prototype it a little bit further, maybe for 2 extra days, see if it's interesting, and then you could even turn it into your first commercial game.
And now this brings us to the next step on our game development roadmap, and that's start tackling level 3 projects. So again, go to your game idea cheat sheet. There's, I think, 3 or 4 different game ideas here, and just choose, for example, 2 level 3 projects and say to yourself, I'm going to make these. Again, take no longer than 2 weeks to make these games. Make sure to post your progress on social media and so on. And if you need to watch tutorials, watch them to fix your specific problems.
Yeah, so and work on all aspects of the game. So again, being a generalist, do the programming, do the game arts, do the sound design.
And so now a new step on this roadmap. And I think at this point, we're more or less, about 2 to 3 months on your game development journey. Once you've actually finished your level 3 projects, let's say you actually started game dev 3 months ago. So this is the point where we suggest you start making your very first devlog, start making a YouTube channel. Because first of all, it's super fun. Being a YouTuber, I think, is an amazing work. It's going to teach you a lot of really important skills, such as marketing, selling yourself. And this is one of the main reasons to make a devlog, is actually selling yourself, selling your work. However, I think we should actually say, what is a devlog? Some of you might not know what that is. What is a devlog, Liam?
So devlog is a video essay talking a little bit about the game you made. So you're going to be sharing the difficulties, the triumphs, like the whole game creation process you're going to be explaining in one single video.
It's a mini game dev documentary on your journey. So like you've made let's say a horror game in 1 month. You'll maybe title this devlog, How I Made a Horror Game in 1 month, and just kind of underline that journey, talk about, as Liam said.
From the game idea all the way to the publication of the game on itch.io.
Yeah, your process of making the game. And not only will this actually help you build an audience, a following of people who actually love your work, But I think the process of even making a devlog can teach you a lot,
Yeah.
right? You're kind of reviewing what you did right, what you might want to do better in the future. You're kind of like understanding a bit better your own thinking process of how you're coming up with games, how you're staying productive, the routines you're going through, and also you'll learn another skill like which is storytelling.
Because at the moment you're creating, we said to you to create, Twitter posts, Instagram posts.
Yeah.
You're just taking this to the next level and creating the same thing basically, but in a video format, so much longer with much more detail.
And it requires a lot, like you're gonna have to try and, as I said, like be a storyteller. Try and make a fun devlog that people are gonna want to watch, that are excited and tells a cool story.
Because the ultimate goal of these videos is to sell the game, to create a following of people that really love the game. They're going to be commenting, they're going to be engaging with you, giving you feedback also in the comments.
Yeah. Okay, and finally, I would say this is like the big step is making your first commercial game. And so you're like, wow, this is terrifying. It's going to take me 10 years.
Oh no,
absolutely not. Liam, how long should this take?
We recommend that your first commercial game. So even though it's a commercial game, so you're going to be asking for money in exchange for this game you're proposing, it should still be a relatively small game. It could be really polished, it could be great,
yeah,
but it needs to still remain small. It's your first one. So we recommend that the game takes no longer than 3 to 4 months to make. Yeah,
I think that's a good time frame, 3 to 4 or 5 months. You can still make some incredible work in that time. There's some games, for example, from we made a commercial game in 3 months. We've got some game developer friends who've also done it in 3 months. Some of them have actually been super successful and have earned the developers, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But that doesn't mean that you need to stop working on this game once it's out. You got to release it after 3 or 4 months, and then you can continue if you want to, make updates on it and new content,
fix bugs and so on. The follow through is really important as well. But yes, as Liam said, set yourself 3 to 5 months to make this commercial game. Now, what is a commercial game going to teach you? Well, it's going to teach you the whole process of making games, right? From coming up with the idea to programming it, making the artwork for it, designing the world, actually getting your game on Steam, making a Steam store page, for example. One thing we really recommend throughout this journey of making your first commercial game is that you collaborate. So most of the game can be made completely solo. If you can find a teammate, all the better. For example, you're the artist, you got the programmer, and then both of you kind of mix design, like sound effects and whatever. So if you've got a little team, that's even better. But if you can't find a reliable teammate, then try to collaborate at least on some small things. Like, for example, hire somebody to make a great logo for your game, or hire a music composer to make a beautiful soundtrack for your work.
So why, if they can do it themselves, why should they collaborate? What's the point?
Great question. How about you answer that one?
So, like game development, there's so many skills that encompasses game development, and just collaborating is extremely fun. It's great to collaborate with an expert in their fields. Even though you can make great music, for example, why not collaborate with somebody? Why not have a great conversation about music and just like get their inputs and have lots of creative minds? Add their little bits to the game. It's going to just make it much more rich, much more, I think
Rome was not built by a single man.
Exactly.
Cathedral was not built by a single pair of hands. It's, the combination of different skills, of different experts that's going to make something truly great. Of course, there are always the exceptions, the geniuses that make everything solo, but they're going to have less fun. I think they're going to have less fun than if you're working with a team.
Yeah. So it's really just for the fun aspect and for the aspect that, their work is probably going to be better if you get a great composer, the music is going to be better. If you get a great programmer, he's going to be able to program much more, clean codes.
Yeah, you're going to save time as well, possibly, and you're going to also learn something.
So again, you'll be marketing this game by creating, regular devlogs. This could be once a month, as we said.
Yeah.
You could continue, doing posts, daily posts or weekly posts.
Make sure
Twitter.
Keep up that social media presence, because if not, you're up for a nasty surprise. Like, even if the game is super fun, it's amazing, and you finish it 3 months, you launch it on Steam without an audience, there's like maybe 1% chance to get noticed at all.
Yeah, because you want a good amount of wish lists also before publishing the game. So in the videos, that's your call to action. Your CTA is to say to people, click on the link in the description and wishlist the game.
Yeah, so that way Steam knows that when your game finally releases, hey, it's got like, say, 5,000 wish lists, 5,000 kind of followers, so people seem to be kind of interested in this project.
It's got to
push it.
It's going to send an email also to all the people that wishes the game, hey, this game is now out.
Push it maybe to the front of the store page, and that's where you start really making loads of sales. But if you've got nobody following you, then your game will release, and you might get like 0 sales. It could be that bad. Especially nowadays, Steam is an enormous platform, hundreds of games being released every single day. So make sure to build up that following.
Of course, guys, it's really great if you make a lot of money with this first game, and you could. Some people do make a successful game, but it's not always the case, and that shouldn't be the main goal for this first project, in my opinion. It's just to create an entire game over 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
Publish it, do all the marketing, do the best you can. But even if you only get, let's say, 30, 40, 50 sales, that shouldn't demotivate you. You've already done the whole process, it's great. You're going to continue, redo, and it's going to get better and better.
Just think about it. Like at this point, when you finish your commercial game, say it does take you 5 months to finish it, which is the max we recommend it takes, because the game again should be really small in scope. That means you've not even started game development a year ago. You're still within your first year of game dev, and you're already releasing games, building a following, learning all these crazy skills. You've done so much. So again, like with that time to finish up the year, make a second commercial game, continue learning. You're still a student and always remain a student, but now you're especially a student because you've only been making games for 1 year, not even. So like you cannot expect to make millions after 1 year, unless you're like some genius or really lucky. This is not going to happen. You're here for the long haul. You're here for the long run. So like within 10 years, you might make a masterpiece and earn those millions of dollars. So that's it for our roadmap. I believe that's it for this game development roadmap 2024. If you follow these steps of mixing up, watching tutorials, but especially experimenting on your own, making your own games, giving yourself really strict deadlines, finishing what you start, keeping it still small and humble to learn and slowly but surely, gradually increase the complexity
Take into
of these
account
projects.
all the good habits that we told you.
Exactly. Then you're going to become a game developer. You're going to become a game developer in 2024.
It's just a matter of time, guys, and hard work. It's not easy, but if you follow these steps.
But who wants it to be easy, right?
Exactly.
Who wants it to be easy? This is an amazing job, an amazing work, and frankly, if me and my brother did it, there's 100% no way that you can't as well.